Okay, anyway, let's go back to Samuel. Chapter 9. This is when the story takes a real turn. If we talked about from the beginning, the book of Judges ends with the fact that there's no king in Israel, leading into the book of Samuel, where Samuel is going to actually crown two different kings. Well, in chapter 9, we are first introduced to the first king, who is Saul. And it's actually quite an interesting story. I'm sure you are familiar with it. There is it's wonderful how in Israel and Hebrew, we have some modern expressions that come straight from the Bible. So there's a modern expression in Hebrew, it's Yatsa l'chapes atonot u'matza melucha. He went out to find donkeys and he found kingship, a king, found it. And it's an expression that's used to talk about somebody who really came into great fortune, even though he wasn't expecting it. Let's say he went to the grocery store and somebody handed him a lottery ticket, and what do you know? It was the winning ticket. That would be the expression for that kind of thing. But it comes from this chapter. And I think that says everything about what this chapter is telling us about about Saul. If you recall, at the very last verse of the last chapter, of chapter 8, and you remember that the nation wants a king, and they refer over and over to it about how they want a king so they can be like all the nations. Okay, if you remember, go back to chapter 8, verse 5, their initial requests: appoint a king for us to govern us like all other nations. And at the end of the chapter, when Samuel goes into this whole speech about how it really isn't worthwhile for them to have a king, and how the king will manipulate them, and he will oppress them, and it will take their money, and they will turn them into servants and slaves and all kinds of things like that. The end, no, they refuse to listen to Samuel. What do they say in verse 19? No, we must have a king over us that we may be like all the other nations. So if you think about what is a king of all the other nations, and those of you in the UK are probably one of the few countries today in the world that still has a king like all the other nations. The coronation that you just had was an attempt, and I think a successful attempt, to ensure that the idea of a king still comes with all this pomp and splendor. Okay, you think of riches, you think of power, you think of all this ceremony, and of course, with the advent of democracy, and again, the UK is a very interesting example of a democracy that still retains the king. So the king today is more symbolic than anything else. The King of England does not have power. Parliament has power, but it's very, you just get a sense from all the decoration, from all the gold and the jewels of what a king once was. And so what was a king in the ancient world? It was a king that was in every way above the nation. And of course, this is in contrast to when we read, and we talked about this last week in Deuteronomy, when God first tells the nation, you're going to have a king, this is what you need to do. And if you recall, one of the requirements has to be from amongst your brothers. And it's not just a technical requirement, he needs to be of Israel, but that the way it's put is that you are his brothers. He is your brothers. He's not a superior human being. He's a leader, but he's equal. He's of you. So when you see the nation over and over asking for a king, like the nations, you get a sense of they're not necessarily referring to the king that is in Deuteronomy, that ordinary fellow who is chosen to lead because maybe he's more righteous and maybe he's smarter and maybe he's more talented, but he is of the brothers. He's amongst the brothers. And so at the end of chapter 8, there's a certain resignation of, God says to Samuel, you're just going to have to listen to them and crown them a king. Okay. And then Samuel just tells everybody, okay, everybody go home. All right, so we don't really know, is Samuel now going out there to find a king? You know, what is Samuel doing with this God saying, listen to them and appoint a king? Well, in chapter 9, we see how that actually plays out. And there's something extremely ironic about it, because there can be no more, I mean, this story represents more than anything else how ordinary Saul is. Totally ordinary. Now, I'm not saying about his talents, his wisdom, his righteousness. I'm not talking about that. But if you think about a king like all the nations, you're thinking about someone of superior birth, superior wealth, of something. And yet this guy is a guy who's looking for donkeys, literally. This idea, he looked for donkeys and became a king, is exactly, that's his biggest worry in this chapter. He's trying to find the donkeys that his father lost. And you know, so keep that in mind as we're reading. I think it's amazing irony. And it's kind of, there's this, I see it as this dialogue in a way between God and the nation. The nation wants a king like the rest of the nations. God says, okay, you'll get your king, but he's going to be an ordinary man. But see what happens to that ordinary man. Does Saul become a king like the nations, or is he able to retain his simplicity? And of course, the answer is no, he doesn't retain his simplicity, but we're jumping ahead of us. So let's just see how it all goes. Okay, there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, son of Aviel, son of Tzor, son of Bechorat, son of Afiach, a Benjamite, a man of substance. Okay, so first of all, the chapter begins not talking about Saul, but talking about his father, Kish. So even in the way the story begins, it's not, there was once a man named Saul and his father's name was Kish. It begins with Kish. To downplay even further who Saul was. Okay, now the English that I read, a man of substance, I would dispute that definition. In Hebrew, it's Gibor Chayil, and Gibor Chayil is always a word associated with strength, bravery, a warrior. You know, so we don't know if he was actually a soldier or not, but he has a reputation of someone who is very capable with bravery and with strength. He can fight the good fight, which is not a man of substance, because a man of substance is usually referring to his wealth. However, the assumption as the story progresses that he is indeed a man of wealth, because he has many donkeys that he's very concerned about losing them, so they must be worth a good penny. Okay, and he tells Saul to take one of the servants. So this is a guy who has a bunch of servants, and he's saying, well, just take one of them. So that's, you know, this impression you get of Kish. And then in verse 2, he had a son whose name was Saul. And here we have the words in Hebrew. In English, it says an excellent young man. And again, that the Hebrew is kind of interesting. It says Bachor Vatov. Now, Bachor usually means a young man. On the other hand, it comes from the same root as Bachar, which means chosen. And so there are two different translations of this word. One refers to his age, he's a young man, and one refers to the fact that he is he's a special kind of guy. He's been chosen. He's kind of an elite type. But I don't think elite in the sense of class. It's more like he's a special guy. Okay. And Vatov, Tov usually just means good. Good in the sense of he's a good person, talking about his character. But many of the interpretations have even the most ancient ones actually translate this word as handsome. So it can either just be an excellent young man, the way it says in English, or it can be a particularly handsome special man. Okay, but whatever it is, he's special. And he says, no one among the Israelites was handsomer as he. See, in the English here, they do translate, it's the same word tov. So this, again, when you think about translation, this is a big boo-boo, okay? Because if the same Hebrew word, tov, is in the same verse, it should not be translated two different ways in English, okay? It's either good or it's handsome. And here it's excellent in the first, and handsome in the second. So it's probably both. Anyway, but then it says he was a head taller than any of the people. This is very interesting. It says in Hebrew, mishichmo v'mala, which literally means from his soldiers and up. No one was taller than him. So you get the sense that all people of Israel came as high as his shoulder. Nobody was as tall as he was above his shoulder. Okay, so you get this idea of a guy that's a head taller than everybody else. But again, if we look at another popular Hebrew expression that has come out of this chapter, is that word, mishichmo v'mala. Except in modern Hebrew, it's not used to refer to someone tall. It's used to refer to someone who is just an exceptionally great person. So again, you have they took that word to kind of summarize what indeed this verse 2 is talking about. Saul is tall, but he's also really exceptional. He's exceptionally handsome. He's exceptionally good. He's special. We have all that built into these various words that are used in this verse. Okay, and then we get to the story. Once the asses of Saul's father Kish went astray, and Kish said to his son Saul, "Take along one of the servants and go out and look for the asses." Okay, so he goes, and it has here a number of the places where they pass. We have the hill country of Ephraim, we have Shalisha, we have Sha'alim, we have we know that they're in Benjamin, but they leave Benjamin because they go from Benjamin to the hill of Ephraim, which is north. They go to the area of Tzuf. And these are the places. Now, what I decided to do is, we haven't looked at a map for a while. Do you see the map now? So this is a map, not the, can you see the map? Yeah, okay. So this is a map, not the biblical map. This time I decided to take our map today. Okay, this is a map that we have on our website. It's also a map that we give out all the time in those brochures, Cry for the Beloved Country, that we've been putting out for many, many, many years. But anyway, I just thought it would be fun to see where he went in the context of the modern map. So it's assumed that Saul's hometown was somewhere near Gibeon, which would be north of Jerusalem. Some people, it's in this area, which is Benjamin. Benjamin begins right north of Jerusalem. So he goes here, and it says he went to the mountain of Ephraim. Now the mountain of Ephraim is up here. Okay, it's I would say it's this area. Okay, now he goes. Now there's an understanding that this area is mountain of Ephraim, but really the following verses tell more about the specific places that he went to. So this land of Shalisha is thought to be in the Jordan Valley. So probably what he did is went from Benjamin straight out here into the Jordan Valley. Look all around here, okay? And then he comes to this place called Shualim, which is supposed to be near Ophrah, okay, which is right here. Those of you who are supporting Heart of Benjamin, or if you visit Ophrah, that's right there. That's in that area. And then he goes to a place called the land of Yemini. It's not quite sure where that is, but it's thought to be up north, right where I live. That's right here where I live. So he's coming from here. He's coming from here. He goes up here. Then he goes down to Tzuf. Now, Tzuf is the area that's roughly between this area, let's say Route 5 near Ariel out to Elkanah over here and south. And in fact, if you look right here, there's a community called Neve Tzuf that is named for this land of Tzuf that is mentioned here. Okay, so he looks here and he can't find it. And he kind of comes, he's here in this area. So he's just made this huge circle up here, up here, up here, and down. And at that point, he's about to give up. And he says to his servant, when they reached the district of Tzuf, Saul said to the servant who was with him, "Let us turn back, or my father will stop worrying about the asses and begin to worry about us." So one of the things you see here about Saul is he's a very, very dutiful son. He is going on this long journey just to find the donkeys, which are so important to his father. And here he's very concerned also that they've been gone so long that his father might, worry about him. And he doesn't want to worry his father so much. So that's also tells us something about him. But then we have the servant. It's the servant who doesn't want to give up. Saul's ready to give up. Okay, what can you do? More important than we go back and tell my father that we're okay. But it's the servant who says, there's a man of God in the town, and the man is highly esteemed. Everything that he says comes true. Let us go there. Perhaps he will tell us about the errand in which we set out. Okay. Now, again, I think this is very interesting. Consistent with this picture, I'm just going to stop the share for now. We don't need this anymore. Consistent with this idea of Saul being a very ordinary person, they're about to go and meet the prophet of the time, Samuel. And we already learned in the previous chapters, he's so highly regarded. He travels all over. People come to him with their disputes, and he adjudicates all these serious disputes, and he teaches, and he's a man of great spiritual strength, and is just an amazing person. And here you have the servant suggesting to Saul, and Saul accepts it. They're going to go to him and ask him where the donkeys are. Can you think of something more stupid? I mean, I realized that the donkeys were worth a lot of money, but and it's also they're looking, people, when they think of prophecy, they think of, oh, this is a guy who can see into the future. He can see, he knows what's going on that other people don't know. That's not really true. A prophet knows what God reveals to him. A prophet is not a gypsy reading coffee grounds or reading the lines on your palm, okay? That's a very pagan view of this kind of thing. A prophet knows what God reveals to the prophet, period, okay? So, but you get this sense that he's going to him almost with this magical idea. Oh yeah, we're going to ask him. He's just going to go, abracadabra, yes, I know where your donkeys are, the way a mentalist will do today. Prophets are not mentalists, okay? But that's the idea. Now, so he agreed. He said in verse 6, in verse 7, but if we go, Saul said to his servant, what can we bring the man? For the food in our bags is all gone. There's nothing we can bring to the man. If God is a present, what have we got? And the servant answered Saul, I happen to have a quarter shekel of silver. I could give that to the man of God. He will tell us about our errand. Again, it's like you're going to the person who's reading the coffee grounds and giving him some money, and he reads the coffee grounds for you. I mean, this is the conception. And then we have verse 9. Now, verse 9 is not part of the dialogue between Saul and his servant. Verse 9 is an insert. The person who wrote this book of Samuel, which of course is divinely inspired, but this is the narrator, so to speak. The narrator is giving us a piece of information that we, a reader coming later in life, this book includes all of David's life. So let's assume anybody reading this book from after David's life, because that's when it would have been written, okay, is now learning about things that happened, a number of years earlier. And it's saying formerly in Israel, in other words, during this time, although not later during King David's time, formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he would say, come, let us go to the seer. But the prophet of today was formerly called a seer. Okay, now seer in Hebrew, it's ro'eh, literally one who sees. And I think this is very interesting because we're talking about a time, it's not just that, I think this verse is not just telling us that there's a different name, okay, but I think there's a different conception. They had a misconception of what a prophet was. They thought he was the mentalist, somebody who sees. And therefore, that colors the mission of what they hope to accomplish. Okay, Saul said to his servant, a good idea, let us go. And they went to the town where the man of God lived. As they were climbing the ascent to the town, they met some girls coming out to draw water. And they asked them, is the seer in town? Yes, they replied, he is up there ahead of you. Hurry, for he has just come to the town because the people have a sacrifice at the shrine today. As soon as you enter the town, you will find him before he goes up to the shrine to eat. The people will not eat until he comes, for you must first bless the sacrifice, and only then will the guests eat. Go up at once, for you will find him right away. So they went up to the town, and as they were entering the town, Samuel came out toward them on his way up to the shrine. Okay, so again, he's walked into town. There's some kind of a festival going on. And this is also very interesting. There were not just the biblical festivals at that time. There were local festivals. There were different kinds of things that were going on. And you could see they've walked in on some kind of festival of this kind that included the prophet, Samuel, sacrifices, etc. Don't forget, there is no tabernacle at this point. There is no temple. And so you have different high places which are legitimate at this point. It is legitimate for high places at a time when there isn't a central tabernacle or a central temple. So anyway, that's when he comes. And then we get here in verse 15, we get again the narrator, the text, the Bible tells us something that gives us an understanding of what had happened. He says, now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed the following to Samuel. At this time tomorrow, I will send a man to you from the territory of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him ruler of my people Israel. Now, I want to make it very clear the words that are used here. In Hebrew, he will be anointed, yes, as says here, as a ruler. The word used is nagid. Ruler, a prince, a leader, whatever you want to call him, not a king. God does not say crown him king. He says crown him a nagid, or a ruler. And then he goes on to say, he will deliver my people from the hands of the Philistines, for I've taken note of my people, their outcry has come to me. Now, I would like to compare that little discussion to the what the angel reveals to the parents of Samson, when she's about to have this baby. And of course, the angel appears. It's an angel, of course, is like a prophet, brings the word of God and tells them that she's going to conceive and have a baby. I'm reading from Judges chapter 13, verse 5. For you are going to conceive and bear a son. Let no razor touch his head, for the boy is to be a Nazarite to God from the womb on. He shall begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines. And here we have a very, very similar sentence. He will deliver my people from the hands of the Philistines. In many ways, therefore, what God is telling Samuel is more similar to the appointment of a judge than to a king. The word king is not used, and he's being told not that he will rule over all of Israel and run all the battles, but that he is going to have a particular job to deliver them from the Philistines. So again, we talked last week about this debate. Was having a king something that should have happened anyway, or it was, okay, if the nation really wants it, we can give in and allow them to have a king so long as they follow certain rules and regulations. And we saw that Samuel certainly thinks it's not a good thing to have a king. And when we read the verses in Deuteronomy, we saw that it could go either way. And in fact, commentators are split as to whether, if indeed they ask, sure, you can have a king, or those who say, no, once you're settled in Israel and you finish conquering the land, then it's definitely a good thing to have a king. Be that as it may, this is part of the debate, because the question then becomes, when God said to Samuel to appoint a nagid, a ruler, did he mean appoint a king, or was he looking at something somewhat less than a king? And again, one of the major differences between a king and any other kind of ruler is that a king, it is hereditary. A king rules, his son rules, his grandson rules, etc., unless there is some kind of bloody overthrow. And so this, again, is part of the debate, and I don't really have an answer for that one, but I think it's a very, very interesting thing. Okay, so then we have what happened. Samuel saw Saul, and the Lord, as soon as Samuel saw Saul, the Lord declared to him, this is the man that I told you would govern my people. Now, Saul has no idea. Saul thinks he's going to, some fellow's going to give him a coin. He's going to say, tell me where my donkeys are. Before he has a chance to do anything, Saul says to Samuel, not knowing who he is, tell me, please, where's the house of the seer? And Samuel answered Saul, I am the seer. Okay, you got me. He doesn't remember. No Twitter, no Facebook. Nobody knows what anybody looks like. So Samuel looks like anybody else, which is also indicative. Okay, Samuel is a prophet. He doesn't have any special cloaks or any special crowns or anything like that. He looks like an ordinary man. And therefore, Saul has no way of knowing that he is indeed this man of God. But Samuel says to him, go up ahead of me to the shrine, for you shall eat with me today, and in the morning I will let you go after telling you whatever may be on your mind. And then he throws in for good measure. Now remember, Saul has not yet said anything to Samuel about what they're there for. And he says, oh, and as for your asses that strayed 3 days ago, do not concern yourself about them, for they have been found. Okay. And for whom is all Israel yearning, if not for you and all your ancestral house? Oh my goodness. At that point, what? Saul's saying, I'm looking for my donkeys. He says, the donkeys are fine, but you're the guy everyone's looking for. And it's like, what? So Saul replied, I am only a Benjamite from the smallest of the tribes of Israel. My clan is the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin. Why do you say such things to me? Now, I will remind you that not only why is Benjamin the smallest of all tribes? Because they were practically decimated at the end of the book of Judges with that whole story with the concubine of Gibeah, civil war. There were 400 men left, of Benjamin, and another 600 from Yavesh Gilad, who they let them marry. And this is a tiny, tiny tribe, but it's also a disgraced tribe. This is a tribe that nobody wanted to have anything to do with. They produced this horrible, horrible story. So it's just even more like me, which in my mind just goes to reinforce all of this, everything we learn about Saul. He is the anti-hero. He's the furthest possible character you would even dream of that would, end up being king. Anyway, at the end, Samuel brings them into the hall. He gives them a special portion of food that it's set aside for him, and they eat. And then he goes, and they go on together. I think Samuel is like, he hasn't gotten really an answer here. Okay, he said, "Why are you talking to me about it?" Samuel says, "Just come with me. Come with me." Gives him food, talks to him, and then at the end, the next day, he says, "Early at the break of day, Samuel called to Saul and all north. He said, 'Get up, and I will send you off.' Saul arose, and the two of them, Samuel and he, went outside. As they were walking toward the end of the town, Samuel said to Saul, 'Tell the servant to walk ahead of us.' And he walked ahead. 'But you stop here a moment, and I will make known to you the word of God.'" And we're going to stop here because we have to go. Next week, we're going to do chapter 10, which is, of course, when we will see that he is actually anointed as king. But this whole chapter 9, preceding the anointing, is one detail after the other, as if to say to us, is he really a king? Not sure. Is he supposed to be like all the nations? Not at all. He's a simple man. He may be a righteous man, and we see elements of his righteousness. He's modest. He is devoted to his father, traveling all over this huge area looking for some donkeys, because that's what his father wants to do, worried about whether his father is going to be worried about him. And this is all he cares about. And he's just taken aback by this whole situation that he falls into. He went out looking for donkeys and he found a king. Well, that's really the story. And we'll take that up next week. Any questions or comments? Turn on your mics.
I just find it. Sorry.
Go ahead, Pauline.
No, I just feel so sorry. I once did a comparison between Saul and Samuel and David. We ended up with very different perspectives than that which we started. And I felt so sorry for Saul. He didn't ask for that. And that Samuel was very harsh on him later. And it's just a sad story.
It is. There is a great tragedy in Saul, and we will definitely be analyzing that in detail as we move along. But let us, as we move forward, let us always remember the Saul, the innocent Saul, the good man, the handsome man, the devoted son, the guy who's saying, "What, me? What are you talking about?" The furthest kind of person you would expect to become what Saul became. And that also may tell us something about king, good or bad. Any other comments?
I have one.
Yes, Claudette.
What is interesting about how they talked about Saul, it gives the impression that he was just a boy when they said a young man. But if I think clearly, Saul had already had children, because when he was ruling, he had Jonathan and Ishbosheth and, and yet he was dedicated to his father as a man, not a boy.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know at what point he has all these children. He doesn't really rule for that long a time, although it's not that clear, because there was one point where it says, I think that he was ruling for 2 years, but yeah.
When he went out to war, he took Jonathan. So Jonathan was a grown man.
What?
I said, when he went out to war for the nation, he took his son, Jonathan.
Right. No. There's no question. But it's if you look at chapter 13, verse 1, it's a little bit odd, because it says Saul was a year old. And it says Saul was a year old when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 2 years. And we're going to discuss that, but that's like, what? A year? He wasn't a year old. And then there are people that think there's something missing, which is a little bit crazy.
Translated different in English. In English, It says it was in the first year, whereas in Shana Shaul, it was 1 year. So it's different.
It says he was
in Hebrew, yes. In Hebrew, yes.
Okay, so and it says this verse is lacking in the Septuagint. It is a very problematic verse. Okay,
I've got a little note in my Bible that says the Hebrew is difficult here, but it says Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose for himself.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it actually says in the Hebrew is Saul was a year old when he reigned, and he reigned for 2 years on Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, the whole thing doesn't make sense, but we will tackle that in chapter 13. But yes, he is young. He's not a boy. The word bachur means a young man, but he could be 30. He could be that he got married and has young children. But certainly by the time we have the battle, which is in chapter 13, Jonathan is a warrior.
Right.
So again, I think it's very interesting, the first verse. How long did he reign? And is it in his first year? And the whole thing is very odd. So I connect that all. We'll discuss that in chapter 13.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yes, Carol.
Hello. Well, I love maps, so it was great to see that map of Israel. Do show it again.
Okay.
Now, going back to Shiloh, where Samuel grew up, right? The tabernacle was there when he grew up, and then it was taken by the Philistines for 7 months. So then it came back fairly quickly to Israel. And I can't for the life of me think where it is, but it says somewhere in Samuel that he went on circuit every year around cities. One of them was Ramah, and I don't know what the other two were. Can't remember.
So we discussed that last week or the week before. That is in chapter 7.
Right.
The end of chapter 7. Samuel judged Israel as long as he lived. Each year he made the rounds of Bethel, Gilgal, and Mitzpah. Okay. But the Ramah is also mentioned elsewhere. All of these places, Beth El is the border between Ephraim and Benjamin. Gilgal is in the Jordan Valley, and Mitzpah is also probably somewhere in Benjamin. Ramah is probably just north of Ramallah of today.
That's probably where he lived, isn't it? It's probably he lived at Ramah.
No, he lived in Ramah, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's
from his father and mother was from there.
My question is, sorry.
His family was not from there. His family was from Tzofim Ramatayim. So if we think about where Saul was wandering here, it is the northern edge of the land of Tzuf. That's where Samuel's family was from. but then he grew up in Shiloh. The tabernacle was destroyed. It's the ark that's taken away, but the tabernacle is completely destroyed. There is nothing left in Shiloh at the end of that battle. So no one's living in Shiloh at that point. Okay. And then he comes, but when we learn about his circuit, it's very focused in Benjamin, although he also is going a bit north and a bit to the east and a bit, but that seems to be.
What do you think the city was then, that he was, it says they went up to the city and there they met Samuel. Have you any idea?
This city is not, it's not necessarily the city that I get the impression from this whole story, it's not his home city. It's a city where he happens to be right then and there, because they're saying, where is the seer? He's here today. It's not like he lives here. He's here today. There's a festival. He's participating in it. So that's the city, whatever city it is. But, it's not like, he happens to be here today. That's all. It's not where he lives. I do believe he lives in Ramah. But then again, that is just north of Jerusalem.
Okay, well, thank you for that. You cleared up the point about the tabernacle being destroyed as well.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. Now, next week, because I will be in the UK and assuming horrible internet, so I'm going to have to cancel the class for next week. But I will resume the following week. So I'll send out a reminder about that. We will not have class next week. We will reconvene in 2 weeks. Great to see you all, and I'll be seeing a few of you.
Yeah,
next week. Very exciting. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Safe travels, Sonia.
I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at cfoic.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.